During the aptly named Progressive era, we saw a rise of progressives all across the United States, regardless of political party, one of the most prevalent ones being Teddy Roosevelt, the 26th president serving from 1901 to 1909. Following all of his predecessors, he chose to forego a second term, but in order to keep his progressive ideology in place, he chose to endorse his protege, Secretary of State William Howard Taft. However, Taft took a significant shift to the right during his tenure. This led to many people pressuring Teddy Roosevelt to run for a third term, despite the fact that Fighting Bob was already challenging Taft in the Republican primaries. Due to Roosevelt's popularity and prior presidential experience, many people shifted from La Follette to Roosevelt, and Roosevelt managed to get 51.1% of the vote in the primary. Even though that was the most votes received in the primary, Taft won the nomination due to the fact that Taft's people were in control of the party. Due to this, Teddy and many of his supporters chose to say, you know what, screw it, we're going to form our own political party, obviously called the Progressive Party, but more commonly known as the Bull Moose Party, because Teddy Roosevelt called himself, quote, as strong as a bull moose. Roosevelt was of course chosen to be their nominee, and popular California Governor Hiram Johnson was selected to be his running mate. The party took on a platform of Roosevelt's new nationalism, which entailed classic progressive reforms such as restricting campaign contributions, an 8-hour workday, women's suffrage, and creating a national health service. Among the people who supported Roosevelt were future Republican presidential candidate Alf Landon, political activist Jane Addams, and left-wing activist and future former Labor Party presidential candidate Parley P. Christensen. Many people criticized Roosevelt as they felt that he wasn't running a true campaign and was only running for his ego and pride. Others criticized him for breaking the two-term precedent, and others criticized him for potentially splitting the vote between party purists and progressive purists, thus allowing Woodrow Wilson to win. Someone even shot Roosevelt because of it, but he took it like a boss. By the end of the election, Roosevelt and Johnson managed to earn 27.4% of the popular vote and 88 electoral votes, getting second place overall. You can make the argument that Roosevelt spoiled the election for Taft, but you could also make the argument that Taft spoiled it for Roosevelt, because, I mean, come on, there was no way that Taft was going to beat Roosevelt, as shown by the primaries. Some historians even argue that Wilson would have won regardless, and we'll look into that later. Meanwhile, in the Senate, one incumbent, Miles Poindexter, was re-elected as a progressive, and the Progressive Party won 9 seats in the House of Representatives. The Progressive Party had a huge advantage going into 1916, with more notoriety than the already prevalent Socialist Party thanks to the 1912 election. They had huge voter turnout, and the time period was called the freaking Progressive era. What could possibly go wrong? Well, at first, nothing. They even tried to get back together with their old GF, the GOP, by holding their conventions on the same day. The Progressives only had one demand, that Roosevelt be the head of the reunified ticket. The Republicans decided to say no, while the frontrunner of the Republican primary, moderate progressive Supreme Court Justice Charles Evans Hughes, was suggested as a compromise candidate. But out of the blue, Roosevelt sent them a message suggesting that conservative Senator Henry Cabot Lodge be the candidate of the Progressive Party. After that shocking suggestion, the Progressives just decided to nominate Teddy Roosevelt again, but this time selecting Louisiana Governor John M. Parker to be his running mate. But, again out of the blue, Roosevelt decided to announce to the Progressive Party that he'd be endorsing Hughes for president and would decline their nomination. After that, they had no clue who their nominee would be. Possible names floated around were Hiram Johnson and the former chief of the U.S. Forest Service, Gifford Pinchot, but both declined the nomination. Kansas Representative Victor Murdoch was floated as a possible replacement, but the motion was defeated 31-15. Murdoch even proposed a ticket comprising of 3-time presidential candidate William Jennings Bryan for president and industrialist Henry Ford as his running mate, but that amounted to nothing. Eventually, a good majority of the party just decided to endorse Republican nominee Charles Hughes, but another significant amount of members, led by John Parker, chose to call themselves the Middle Road Progressives, decided they were going to keep a Progressive Party ticket in the election. Now, since Teddy Roosevelt already denied the nomination, you'd think that Parker would become the head of the ticket and he'd pick someone else to be his running mate, but Parker chose to remain the VP candidate and left the head of the ticket empty. Despite this kind of strange thing, the Progressive Party managed to get 0.18% of the popular vote. That shows how convicted many of the progressive voters were. They were literally willing to vote for nobody rather than the Republican Party candidate. After all this, many progressives just decided to head back to the Republican Party, while some actually chose to go to the Democratic Party thanks to Woodrow Wilson. After the 1916 fiasco that led to many progressives leaving to join the two major parties, some of the former members chose to create a new political association called the Committee of 48, with the intention of creating a new progressive party to combat the conservatives in both major parties. But the 1924 election, they had been split over which progressive Republican to support over Coolidge, Hiram Johnson, or Robert M. La Follette, both of whom were running against Coolidge, and both of whom lost. While Johnson just decided to give up, La Follette chose to take the Committee of 48 on their offer to start a brand new political party called, wait for this, you're going to get surprised, the Progressive Party. Its platform called for government ownership of railroads, outlawing child labor, helping labor unions, and ending American imperialism. They met for 2 days in July in a convention called the Conference for Progressive Political Action, with 1,200 delegates from the Socialist Party, Farmer Labor Party, the American Federation of Labor, the Nonpartisan League in North Dakota, and the Labor Party of Pennsylvania. Though Workers' Party delegates were denied entry, all parties and groups in attendance chose to nominate Robert M. La Follette for president, and he later chose Democratic Senator Burton Wheeler to be his running mate. Among the people who supported La Follette were political activist and author Helen Keller, civil rights activist W.E.B. Du Bois, and five-time Socialist Party candidate Eugene V. Debs. This coalition granted him ballot access in 47 states, and overall he managed to attain 16.61% of the popular vote, and Wisconsin's 13 electoral votes. This iteration of the party is stated to have existed for 10 more years until the La Follette family created the Wisconsin Progressive Party, but aside from the state party in California, which existed since 1912, there's nothing in my research to indicate activity outside of California. Man, it took a while for another progressive party to form, right? I mean, we had another world war, FDR died, and the Cold War/Second Red Scare had just begun. The biggest catalyst that caused new parties to form was Harry Truman desegregating the military. This caused two people to create new political parties: Governor of South Carolina, Strom Thurmond, who felt Truman was going too far and created the States' Rights Democratic Party, but more importantly, Henry A. Wallace, FDR's former VP and 10th Secretary of Commerce until he was fired by Harry Truman, who felt that Truman wasn't going far enough. Wallace created a new progressive party, obviously called the Progressive Party. What else would it be called? Wallace is best known for being ideologically closer to FDR than Truman, though still being further to the left than both. After a 3-day convention, Wallace was nominated, and Senator from Idaho, Glenn H. Taylor, was selected to be his running mate. They also drafted a platform that called for universal health care, expanding the welfare system, nationalizing the energy industry, and peace with the Soviet Union. That last one got the attention of two distinct groups in America: American Communists and American Anti-Communists. People made this even more of an issue when Wallace received an endorsement from the American Labor Party, a party in New York that split off from the Socialist Party to support FDR's last 2 terms, but the bigger one being when he received an endorsement from the Communist Party USA, due to the fact that Wallace didn't just tell the commies to go slap their salamis and allowed the Communist Party members to help him campaign. Many people accused Wallace of being a secret communist spy, or at the very least, a pawn of the U.S. Communist Party, like American filmmaker Orson Welles, who called Wallace, quote, a prisoner of the Communist Party. He would never do anything to upset them. Though there's no evidence to exist that shows this was the case. Among the people that knew Wallace wasn't a pawn and supported him included American Labor Congressman Vito Marcantonio, folk singer Pete Seeger, future Senator and presidential candidate George McGovern, and scientist Albert Einstein. By the end of the election, Wallace managed to get 2.37% of the popular vote and no electoral votes, since his support was more spread evenly across the United States, as opposed to Strom Thurmond, who got slightly more than Wallace, but had his support more concentrated in the South. After the whole Wallace is a secret commie thing, Henry Wallace wrote an article entitled Where I Was Wrong, that detailed how he regretted being too friendly towards Stalin and was now in the anti-communist boat. The catalyst of this was in 1950, when the Executive Committee of the Progressive Party issued a policy statement against the U.S. military involvement in Korea, while Wallace was in favor of it, and when he told them, hey, maybe we should criticize North Korea for invading the South, the Progressive Party said, what are you talking about? To solidify that Wallace was now an anti-Soviet, he decided to endorse war hero Dwight D. Eisenhower over Adlai Stevenson, or the eventual nominee of the Progressive Party, and now that Wallace was off of this train, there was no reason for the media to pay attention to this party anymore, so nobody did. Despite this, the Progressive Party still fielded a candidate, that candidate being lawyer Vincent Hallinan. Newspaper editor and civil rights activist Charlotta Bass was selected to be his running mate. Both of these are notable due to Bass being the first African-American woman to be nominated for vice president, and Hallinan being the first atheist to run for president. Due to them not getting as much media attention as Wallace did, they only got 0.23% of the popular vote. And with that, we've reached the most recent updates of all three national progressive parties. I say national because there are a couple of state progressive parties that could also get videos of their own. Thanks for watching this video. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and click that bell to be notified when a future video of mine comes out. And if you're interested for more political content from me, you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, or Quora. Or you can head to my website to find out a ton of other things, such as who I'm endorsing for political office, because I'm open about that. What are your thoughts on the Progressive Party? Do you like them? Do you hate them? Do you want another national progressive party? Leave your thoughts in the comment section below.